What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Horsemen Sports, where today we continue division debates with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, just for starters, if you're looking for a channel that is strictly Colts content and all the Colts news you could ever need, Indianapolis Colts Syndicate is quickly becoming the new home for all the Colts news you're ever going to need. So go over there, make sure you're subscribed, have notifications on to stay updated on all the Colts information you could ever need. And with that out of the way, let's start talking about the Colts, where last year in 2022, they finished with a 4-12-1 record. After being one of the favorites to win the AFC last year, they completely hit to bed. They disappointed everybody. So ultimately, when you ask, did they get better or worse in the 2023 offseason? Of course, they got better. They couldn't really go much anywhere else except for up. Right. So the Colts, even though you say they got better, they're tough to assess, mainly due to the fact that Anthony Richardson has such high potential, but no one really knows or can predict if he's going to be great right away or if he's going to have a Josh Allen type of ascension where you see flashes for a year or two and then he gets great in year three. Right. Is it going to I hope it's not something like that. It'd be great to start winning games again. Ultimately, as a Colts fan, I want things to just be copacetic. I want things to be entertaining again and just not be the way they were last year. Last year was so boring to watch, but as a Colts fan, I love the Colts. I had to keep watching it. Doing this, had to make sure I was watching it. But man, last year was brutal. And with Anthony Richardson, I think things can change. Matt Ryan, he's gone. Gardner Minshew, he comes in, gets signed to be in competition with Anthony Richardson, and I think that's great. I think Gardner Minshew is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. There are a number of teams in the NFL that he could be starting on, but he decided to come here pretty much knowing that we were about to draft a rookie quarterback, right? And I think that's awesome. I think he has an awesome personality, the kind of person that he is. So having him in the organization, I think is great. And who he is on the field, sure, he's not a top 12 quarterback, but I think he's fine if we have to start him for a little while over Anthony Richardson. I'm okay with that. I honestly kind of expect that to be the case, at least for the first month of the year, unless we get into this point in training camp in the preseason where Anthony Richardson continues to ascend. I know on the day I'm recording this, Anthony Richardson just had a remarkable day at training camp. And at this point, very curious to see how it looks continuing going forward, because the training camp practice before today's practice was his worst day of practice so far. So it's going to be interesting to see how Anthony Richardson progresses. But of course, being Colts fans, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on that. Right. And then you look at who the quarterbacks have to throw to. The Colts have been criticized for years about who they have at wide receiver. Right, so we have Michael Pittman Jr. coming back. Alec Pierce coming into his second season. Hearing a lot of really good things about Alec Pierce. He might be the difference this year. Look out for Alec Pierce to be one of the better breakout candidates of the season. Then we were able to sign Isaiah McKenzie and Brashad Perriman in this offseason. We were also able to draft Josh Downs in the third round. Put on some tape of Josh Downs in college. I couldn't tell you how on earth this dude made it into the third round. He's 5'9" and was the best contested catch receiver in all of college football. Dude, do you have any idea how many college football teams there are? A 5'9" guy is the best contested catch football player in the nation in college. So it's unreal that he made it to the third round, but the Colts got him. And with what the Colts have done in past years, they drafted Michael Pittman Jr. a few years ago. Next year, they get Alec Pierce. This year, they get Josh Downs. They were able to get Isaiah McKenzie, who is a great free agent pickup at wide receiver, especially for the price that he's coming in on. Brashad Perriman as a late guy you bring in, a depth piece, being able to bring him in. Amari Rodgers was just signed the day before I'm recording this as a depth piece, probably a special teams guy, but adding more depth. Mike Strawn is still on the roster. The Colts have guys to throw to, and that's just the receivers, right? You can go past that and look at the tight ends, and all the tight ends that they have. Mo Alley Cox. I don't even know if he's going to make the team. Sounds like he's still getting reps with the starters. He's a really good run blocker, so probably going to make the team. But we have so many tight ends that's a question I'm actually asking is there any room for Mo Alley Cox anymore? Because then you have Kylan Granson, guaranteed to make the team. Jelani Woods, guaranteed to make the team. But you have Drew Ogletree, who last year was being talked about as probably the best tight end on the roster, and then he tore his ACL early in training camp. Now he's coming back this year. What are they going to do with him? Because they also drafted tight end Will Mallory in this 2023 draft class, very strong with tight ends, like very strong, very deep with tight ends. Will Mallory is already making plays. He's only at this point, the point in which I'm recording this video, Will Mallory's only practiced with the Colts twice, and he's already making highlight type plays in practice. So again, the tight end room is deep, man. People keep dogging the Colts for not having enough guys. They have too many at this point. I don't know what they're going to do with everybody once they have to start making roster cuts and have to cut the roster size from 90 to 53 by the time the regular season comes around. I have no idea who's going to be here. But I do know some of the guys that I wish were still here. You know, you're talking about Stephon Gilmore and Isaiah Rodgers. Stephon Gilmore gets traded. Understandable for him. He's trying to win a Super Bowl. We're kind of rebuilding. Go ahead, get rid of him. Just wish he could have stayed around. Isaiah Rodgers obviously getting suspended and cut. It never came out whether or not he was betting for or against the Colts. If he was betting against his own team, like good riddance. You know what I mean? If he was betting for his team, you know, honestly, kind of bummed that he's gone. You know, I had a lot of faith in him, thought he was going to be really good coming into this season. But the Colts had other ideas. Chris Ballard said that at the time of the draft, they had no idea about the allegations that were going to be happening with Isaiah Rodgers and the thing that ultimately got him suspended. So when they drafted Juju Brents in the second round, and they drafted Darius Rush, and they drafted Jalen Jones later in the draft, like they went out and got a bunch of guys at cornerback specifically. I mean, they got other guys in the secondary, but they got 3 cornerbacks in the draft. And I think that speaks volumes. And I think the rookies are going to have a pretty big impact. But right now, at the time I'm recording this, Darius Rush, his first day of practice was today after a shoulder surgery this offseason. Juju Brent not practicing in training camp at all so far. So we're waiting for some of these guys to get on the field. We're really going to have to see and pay attention to what the Colts are doing in the secondary as we go forward. But at this point, that's really the worst part of this team is the secondary. Even though we all like Rodney Thomas, Julian Blackmon, he has trouble staying healthy. We all have high hopes on Nick Cross. The secondary is extremely young. I'm extremely nervous about it, but I do have high hopes because I do think that Juju Brents and Darius Rush are very talented. And Chris Ballard usually hits really well on mid-round picks. So I have a lot of faith in these guys, but there's a lot of unknown with this Colts team, especially you look at the whole Jonathan Taylor situation. I don't even know Jonathan Taylor is going to be playing for the Colts this season. So at this point, again, a lot of unknowns. Zach Moss isn't there. I guess if you're a Colts fan, name that you should know is Evan Hull, 5th-round rookie, pick number 123. He has been impressing a lot of people in Colts training camp. So if Jonathan Taylor isn't playing this year, Zach Moss is out for the first game or 2 of the season. Don't be surprised when you see Deion Jackson, Evan Hull become stars in the fantasy world. Okay, and just a few more quick notes here about some of the moves that the Colts made to their roster this year. Yannick Ngakoue, still a free agent. He might come back to the Colts. At this point, probably not, in my opinion. The Colts did sign Samson Ebukam, edge rusher from the 49ers this offseason. I thought that's a great pickup. They also drafted somebody that can play a versatile role inside and outside. I'm not going to attempt to say his full name because it's crazy, but they call him Tommy. And I think he can be really good. Right now, we're kind of deep, especially with a lot of young guys on the defensive line. So how much is he really going to play? How much can he really be effective? Not really sure in his rookie season, but going forward, the Colts aren't going to be able to pay everybody. So I think sooner rather than later, we're going to see Tommy have an impact for this football team. Another guy that can have a big impact for this football team for the next, 5 years, I think, is going to be Matt Gay, who signed the largest kicker contract ever. Very excited about that with the way kickers have been since Vinatieri's last season up to last season. It's been so inconsistent, but I think Matt Gay can come in and be very good. We're not going to have to worry about distance, accuracy. For the most part, pretty good. He's kind of iffy between 40 and 49 for some reason, but other than that, Matt Gay, earns his contract. That's simplest way I could put it. He earns his contract. Another guy that earns his contract is Bobby Okereke, who got signed by the Giants, got a really good deal with the Giants this offseason. Paris Campbell also went to the Giants this offseason, got a nice little deal for himself. So those losses hurt, especially Bobby Okereke. He is so good. So good. Nobody talks about him because Shaq Leonard's on the team, but Bobby Okereke, if you're a Colts fan, not a whole lot of people outside of Colts Nation know that Bobby Okereke is truly probably a top 5 or 8 linebacker, pure linebacker in the NFL. He doesn't do the pass rush thing. So if you take those guys and just make them DNs instead of linebackers, Bobby Okereke, in my opinion, a top 8 linebacker in the NFL. But again, on the Giants and not the Colts. Okay, so with all that in mind, everything we talked about with this roster, what they did to the roster, the unknown of the Colts this season, let's look at some of the important or notable games that they're going to have this year. And they have a few of them, so we're going to roll through them pretty quickly. Week 1 against the Jags, this is the potential first start for Anthony Richardson, which would also be his first division game. Now, this is also important because Jacksonville, for some reason, is always the Colts' bugaboo. So, and that's usually in Jacksonville too. The Colts are usually actually pretty successful against Jacksonville in Indy. But in this game, I have Jacksonville beating the Colts in week 1. In week 2, it's Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud. And that kind of speaks for itself. This is the future of both these franchises in the same division. I don't know how the Colts end up with 2 division games to start the year. That's kind of crazy, but that is what it is. Anthony Richardson getting a good taste of what the NFL is all about. It's a cutthroat business, baby. So going up against CJ Stroud, and I actually think the Colts are a better football team all around the quarterbacks. So I think the Colts are able to win that game in week 2. Then you fast forward to week 9. The Colts play the Panthers in Carolina. It's Anthony Richardson versus Bryce Young, and it's the first time playing against Frank Reich since he was fired from the Colts. So this game is going to be a pretty big deal. I assume there are going to be a lot of people wanting to have their eyes on this game to see how this one goes. Again, because of the 2 rookies, right? Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick. Anthony Richardson, number 4 overall pick. Frank Reich going up against the Colts, and all that happened. Right? He gets fired, Jeff Saturday hired, and then everything that happened. It was a wild ride. So Frank Reich and that football team, they're going to be trying to make a point against the Colts, but the Colts also needing to make a point that, hey, we're just going to shrug that off. We're not going to give it to you. Ultimately, I do have the Colts winning that week 9 game against the Panthers. The next week in week 10 against the Patriots in Germany, it's the Patriots and it's in Germany. Speaks for itself. Don't really have to say anything else. Then you look at weeks 15 to 18, which are all winnable games. This is a good chance for Richardson and the Colts to finish the season on a high note, right? And their opponents in those games, they play the Steelers, the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Texans in that order. I have them going 3-4 in those games, with the only loss coming against the Falcons in week 16. And with everything I told you, most of the games we talked about, I had the Colts winning. So you probably think I have a pretty unrealistic expectation of the Colts this year. It just happened to work out that way. Honestly, I have the Colts going 7-10 in 2023. And I expect there to be a learning curve for Anthony Richardson and everyone that's operating in the new offense, right? The defensive coaching staff is still the same. A lot of the players on the defense are still the same. So it's not that I'm really worried about, but the offense has a whole new coaching staff, a lot of new players, new quarterbacks once again. So we're going to have to see how the offense can perform. And honestly, again, my expectation, it's going to be a slow start. Things aren't going to be great. I don't know if I mentioned or not, I have the Patriots beating the Colts in week 10. Belichick always does well against rookie quarterbacks. So I kept my bias as much away from the record prediction as possible. And I think 7-10 is pretty reasonable for what I've been hearing about Anthony Richardson and the offense so far in training camp. I think it's going to be better than people imagine, but still not going to be phenomenal. Anthony Richardson, the truth still remains. He only started 13 games in college. So as excited as we can be about Anthony Richardson and what this new coaching staff can be and what this Colts team can be, temper expectations for 2023 and look for 2024 to be a big year, because the Colts have an estimated like $78 million in cap space at the start of next season. So with that said, that's going to wrap up 2023 version of Division Debates covering the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to be back tomorrow with the Jacksonville Jaguars as we continue division debates every day up until the NFL season. So be sure you're subscribed with notifications on. Don't forget to take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you for the next video.